Hulagu Khan. The Mongol army was advancing toward Baghdad. In 1258, Baghdad was besieged. The city fell quickly. The House of Wisdom was destroyed. The Tigris River flowed dark with ink for days. The last Abbasid caliph was killed. And thus, Abbasid rule in Baghdad came to an end. Baghdad had fallen. The city fell into silence. But knowledge did not disappear. Knowledge moved to other cities. The Abbasid Caliphate continued in Cairo. The Caliphate had not completely ended. Abbasid knowledge reached Europe. This knowledge influenced Europe's awakening and became one of the foundations of the Renaissance. Abbasid knowledge spread across continents. Centuries later, the Caliphate passed to the Ottomans. This legacy continued to live on. Baghdad was once one of the centers of the world. The House of Wisdom changed human history. The Abbasids were not just a state. They were a bridge of civilization. And history never forgot them. The year is 793. The ships on the horizon were not ordinary. Long, narrow, and crowned with dragon heads. The warriors of the north were coming. The longships reached the shore. Warriors carrying shields and axes stepped onto this silent coast. Lindisfarne was no longer safe. A monk wrote in his chronicle, "God protect us from the fury of the Northmen." Europe was now facing a new threat. The Vikings were not born raiders. It was the harsh geography they lived in that pushed them toward the sea. Narrow lands, long winters, and limited resources forced northern people to search for new horizons. Population was growing in Scandinavia. Land was limited. For young warriors, the path to wealth and glory now lay across the sea. The Vikings' greatest strength was not only their warriors, but their ships. Long ships could cross open seas and travel deep inland through shallow rivers. The Vikings did not raid England alone. Soon they reached the coasts of France, the Baltic, and the rivers of Eastern Europe. The northern warriors were now everywhere across Europe. In 845, Viking ships sailed along the Seine River. The northern warriors had reached the heart of Europe. Their target was Paris. King Charles the Bald was forced to pay a large tribute to save Paris. European kingdoms were now negotiating with the Vikings, instead of stopping them. The Vikings were no longer only raiders. They settled across large parts of eastern England. These lands became known as the Dynasties. But England did not completely fall. King Alfred the Great of Wessex managed to stop the Viking advance. His resistance changed the future of England. Some Vikings turned east instead of west. Traveling along great rivers, they reached Byzantium. They were now known as the Varangians. Some Viking warriors entered the service of the Byzantine Empire. In Constantinople, they became the emperor's most trusted guards. This elite unit was known as the Varangian Guard. The Vikings were not only raiders, they explored new lands and settled there. Iceland became one of the most important colonies founded by the northern people. Viking explorer Eric the Red sailed even farther west. He named the newly discovered land Greenland and established a new colony there. Leif Erikson sailed farther west and reached a new continent. The Vikings had set foot in North America nearly 100 years before Christopher Columbus. The Vikings were not only warriors, they built powerful trade networks stretching from the Baltic to the Black Sea, transporting furs, silver, and valuable goods. Viking society was divided into three main classes. Jarls were the ruling elite. Carls were the free people. Thralls stood at the lowest level as slaves. In the Viking world, battle was more than survival. They believed in Odin's wisdom, Thor's strength, and that brave warriors would enter Valhalla after death. Over time, the Viking world began to change. Scandinavian kings accepted Christianity. The old gods were slowly replaced by a new faith. The Viking Age came to an end, but the legacy of the northern warriors lived on in Europe's culture, trade, and exploration. They were not only raiders, they were explorers who helped shape history. One of the most mysterious figures in Viking history was Ragnar Lothbrok. According to some sources, he was a great warrior. According to others, only a legend. Ragnar Lothbrok later turned toward the shores of England, but this time, the campaign would not end as he expected. Ragnar Lothbrok quickly gained fame in the Viking world. His raids across England and Frankish lands made his name legendary among northern warriors. Ragnar was not only a warrior. Under his leadership, many Viking warriors united. Across the northern world, his name became associated with great expeditions. Ragnar Lothbrok sailed toward England one last time, but this time he did not command a great army. This journey would change his fate. Ragnar Lothbrok was captured in England. By order of King Alella, he was thrown into a pit of snakes. But his death did not end the Viking raids. It marked the beginning of a much greater army. Ragnar's death caused great anger in the north. His sons gathered one of the largest Viking armies in history to take revenge. In 866, the great heathen army reached the shores of England. This was no longer a raid. It was the beginning of a permanent invasion. The great heathen army quickly captured the city of York. The city would now be known as Jorvik, and became a major center of Viking power in England. The great heathen army quickly began to shake the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. Northumbria, Mercia, and East Anglia fell under Viking control. Much of England was now in the hands of northern warriors. Much of England had fallen to the Vikings, but the kingdom of Wessex still stood. King Alfred formed the last line of defense against the Viking advance. In 878, at the Battle of Edington, Alfred's army stopped the Viking leader Guthrum. This victory became a turning point that prevented England from falling completely under Viking rule. After the victory at Edington, Alfred and the Viking leader Guthrum agreed on the Treaty of Wedmore. England was now divided between two worlds: the south, under Anglo-Saxon control, and the east under Viking rule. In 1066, William, Duke of Normandy, invaded England. This conquest was not only a change of kings, it was the return of the Viking legacy to England. The Norman descendants of the Vikings reached not only England, but also the Mediterranean. In southern Italy and Sicily, they established new kingdoms and shaped the politics of southern Europe. In 1066, Viking King Harald Hardrada launched his final campaign into England, but he was defeated at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. This defeat marked the end of the Viking Age. The Vikings changed Europe not only through war, but through the legacy they left behind. The cities they founded, the trade routes they opened, and the kingdoms they shaped permanently influenced the continent. The Vikings became the first Europeans to reach North America. The settlement at Vinland was short-lived, but it marked the first known European journey across the Atlantic. The Vikings were not only raiders, they were traders, explorers, warriors, and the legacy they left behind changed the course of European history. The greatest strength behind Viking success was their ships. Carefully built, long ships could cross open seas and travel deep inland through rivers. The Vikings were not only brave, they were skilled navigators. Using the sun, the stars, and signs from the sea, they were able to travel across the open ocean. The Vikings were not only warriors from the north, they were explorers who expanded Europe's horizons, sailors who reshaped trade routes, and a civilization that influenced the course of world history. In the 11th century, the Great Seljuk Empire was the most powerful state in the Middle East. In Baghdad, the Abbasid Caliph remained in place, while real political power was held by the Yet, in the rugged mountains of northern Persia, a different movement was beginning to emerge. Soon, the center of this movement would become the fortress of Alamut. Hasan Seba was born around the year 1050 in the city of Qam in Persia. From a young age, he showed a strong interest in knowledge and learning. He studied theology, mathematics, and philosophy. He studied theology, mathematics, and philosophy. During his early years, Hasan Subba encountered the teachings of the Islam. To understand this teaching better, he set out on a journey to Cairo. At that time, Cairo was one of the most important centers of learning under the Fatimid Caliphate. There, Hasan Subba met important figures of the Ismaili movement. However, political struggles within the Fatimid court made Hasan Subba's position increasingly difficult. As a result, he was forced to leave Cairo. Hasan Subba began his journey back toward Persia. His goal was now to establish a new center in the mountains. In 1090, Hasan Subba turned his attention toward the fortress of Alam. The fortress was captured not through battle, but through careful strategy. Alamut had now become Hasan Subba's center of power. Soon, this fortress would become the center of a new state. After capturing the fortress of Alamut, Hasan Subba began establishing a new order there. This was not merely the control of a fortress, but the beginning of a new political structure. Soon, other mountain fortresses around Alamut joined this growing network. Thus, a new state connected across the mountains began to emerge. Instead of building large armies, Hasan Subba formed a small but disciplined force. These men were the Fedayeen, trained with absolute loyalty. The Fedayeen were prepared for precise missions rather than open warfare. This system quickly made Hasan Subba's power felt across the region. At this time, the Great Seljuk Empire was the dominant political power across Persia and the surrounding regions. One of the most powerful figures of the Seljuk state was the vizier Nizam al-Mulk. The Seljuk administration viewed Hasan Subba's movement as a serious threat. Thus began a long struggle between the Seljuks and Alamut. In 1092, the Seljuk vizier Nizam al-Mulk was attacked during a journey. A Fedayeen approached the vizier and carried out the assassination. This event caused a major shock across the Islamic world. This assassination demonstrated the power of Alamat across the region. After the assassination of Nizam el-Mulk, the influence of Alamat rapidly expanded. Regional rulers now had to take the power of Alamat seriously. Instead of open warfare, the Fedayeen changed the balance through targeted missions. This method allowed Hazen Seba to survive against powerful states with a relatively small force. The fortress of Alamat did not remain alone for long. Soon, important fortresses such as Lamisar joined this network. These fortresses formed a powerful defensive system, connected through communication. Thus, a connected defensive network was established across the mountains. During this period, Crusader states had emerged in the Eastern Mediterranean. These new powers began to reshape the political balance of the region. The Nizari Ismailis sometimes fought these states, and sometimes established diplomatic relations with them. The fortresses in Syria became important centers of these interactions. Hazen Seba continued his rule from the fortress of Alamat for many years. He maintained a highly disciplined system of governance. He spent most of his life without leaving Alamat. As his life neared its end, the state he had built continued to survive. Hazen Seba died in 1124 in the fortress of Alamat. However, his death did not mark the end of the state he created. The Nizri Ismaili state, centered in Alamat, continued to survive. The system established by Hazen Seba continued to remain influential for many years. In the 13th century, a new power began advancing into Persia from the east. This power was the Mongol army. The Mongol forces were commanded by Hulagu Khan. And one of their targets would be the fortress of Alamat. In 1256, Mongol armies advanced toward Alamat. The fortress of Alamat, which had resisted for decades, was placed under siege. In the end, the fortress of Alamat fell to the Mongols. Thus, the state founded by Hazen Seba came to an end. In one of the harshest lands on earth, a child was born. His name was Temujin. No one knew his future, but his destiny was not ordinary. His father was a tribal leader, but his enemies killed him. Temujin and his family were abandoned. They had to survive. Temujin and his family were abandoned by their tribe. He grew up fighting hunger. Temujin brought food back to his family. He was already carrying the burden of responsibility. But being alone on the steppe was dangerous. He did not yet know the threat approaching him. One day, he was captured. But he managed to escape. Now he was alone. But he had a great vision. And that vision would change the world. Young Temujin found a powerful ally. His name was Jamuka. They grew up together. They fought together. Temujin began gathering loyal warriors. He was no longer alone. But leadership was not easily earned. Jamuka was chosen as leader. Temujin chose a different path. He chose ordinary warriors over nobles. This decision changed everything. Old friends were now rivals. An inevitable war was approaching. The steppe became a battlefield. And Temujin would not turn back. Temujin began to fight. The steppe was his battlefield. Many tribes joined him. His army was growing rapidly. But Jamuka still stood against him. A great battle began. Temujin did not retreat. Jamuka was defeated. His old friend was captured. And their destinies changed. Now the tribes were uniting. A great Kurultai was called. A new leader would be chosen. All eyes turned to Temujin. The tribes supported him. And the decision was made. A new era was beginning. Temujin was now Genghis Khan. The Mongols were now one army. And the world had not yet met them. Genghis Khan built a powerful army. The strength of the army was speed and mobility. They could shoot arrows while riding. Their bows were deadly. They used the feigned retreat tactic. They lured their enemies into traps and surrounded them. The army was disciplined. Every unit was organized. Orders moved quickly. A relay system was created. This system sped communication. Scouts gathered intelligence. Plans were prepared in advance. Now borders would be crossed. In 1211, Genghis Khan invaded northern China. The first target was China. The Mongols advanced against the Jin dynasty. The war was just beginning. In 1215, Zhongdu was captured. Zhongdu, Bugian-Kopeki. New cities were targeted. Northern China was now under Mongol control. In 1218, the Mongols turned west. A Mongol trade caravan arrived in Ot. But the caravan was arrested. The envoys were executed. Genghis Khan answered with war. In 1219, the Great Campaign began. Otra was besieged. The city was captured. The next target was Bukhara. In 1220, Bukhara fell. Genghis Khan entered the city. The next target was Samarkand was besieged. The city fell quickly. The Khwarezm Shah fled. The Mongols pursued him. The Khwarezm Shah died in the Caspian Sea. The Mongols advanced into Persia. Many cities fell. The Mongols continued westward. Now the world knew them. The Mongol army crossed the Caucasus Mountains. They were now approaching the gates of Europe. Mongol scouts were watching the Rus principalities. The great cities of Europe did not yet know the danger that was coming. Mongol reconnaissance forces moved across the Russian steppe. The borders of Europe were now before them. The Rus princes united against the Mongols. Europe was preparing a common defense for the first time. In 1223, the two armies faced each other at the Kelka River. This confrontation marked the beginning of a new era for Europe. The Mongols used the feigned retreat tactic. They were drawing the Rus army into a planned trap. The Rus army began to pursue the Mongols. But this advance was leading them into a trap. The Mongols suddenly turned back. The Rus army was now surrounded. The Rus army suffered a devastating defeat. Europe witnessed the true power of the Mongols for the first time. This victory was the result of Subutai and Jeeb's strategy. The Mongols had now tested the strength of Europe. The Mongols could have advanced deeper into Europe. But this campaign was only a reconnaissance mission. Europe was no longer unknown to the Mongols. This reconnaissance laid the foundation for future invasions. The Mongol reconnaissance army turned back east. The knowledge they gathered would shape future campaigns. In 1226, Genghis Khan launched his final campaign. The target was the Western Shaya Kingdom. The Mongol army entered Western Xia territory. Soon, major cities were placed under siege. Western Xia cities were under heavy assault. The Mongols were tightening the siege ring. During the Western Xia campaign, Genghis Khan fell ill. Yet the army continued its advance. In 1227, Genghis Khan died. The death of Genghis Khan was kept secret from the army. The campaign continued until the mission was complete. Genghis Khan was buried in a secret location. The place of his grave remains unknown, even today. In 1229, Ogedei Khan was proclaimed Great Khan. The Mongol Empire would continue to expand. Ogedei Khan made Karakoram the capital of the empire. From here, campaigns across Asia and Europe were directed. In 1236, Beta Khan launched a great campaign toward the west. Subutai was the strategic architect of this invasion. The Mongols defeated the Volga Bulk. The gates of Eastern Europe were now open. In 1237, Ryazan was besieged by the Mongols. The city was completely destroyed in a short time. In 1238, Vladimir fell to the Mongols. The resistance of the Rus principalities began to collapse rapidly. In 1238, Moscow was burned by the Mongols. Though still a small settlement, it was completely destroyed. In 1240, Kiev was captured by the Mongols. One of the greatest cities of Eastern Europe had fallen. The Mongol armies were now advancing towards Central Europe. Poland and Hungary had become the next targets. In 1241, European knights faced the Mongols at the Battle of Lignita. But once again, the Mongol army proved superior. In 1241, the Hungarian army suffered a devastating defeat at the Battle of Mohi. The Mongols had now reached the gates of Central Europe. The Mongol armies continued advancing across Central Europe. Europe now appeared defenseless. In 1241, Ogedei Khan died. The Mongol army had to return for the Kurultai assembly. The Mongol army withdrew from Europe. But this was not a defeat. Beta Khan established the Golden Horde in the Western Territories. The Rus principalities were now under Mongol rule. The Mongol Empire became the largest land empire in history. Its land stretched from China to Europe. The Mongols established secure trade routes across Eurasia. This period became known as the Pax Mongolica. The Mongol Empire connected different cultures across Eurasia. Knowledge and technology spread rapidly along its routes. Thanks to Mongol roads, travelers like Marco Polo reached Asia. The world was becoming more connected. The Mongols did not just build an empire. They changed the course of the world. Across the Eurasian steppe, a new power was rising. This power was not just a state. It was the legacy of the greatest land empire the world had ever seen. And this legacy would give rise to the Golden Horde. In 1227, Genghis Khan died. After his death, the Mongol Empire was divided among his sons. The western lands were entrusted to the lineage of Jochi. And this legacy would soon give rise to the Golden Horde. Under Bata Khan's leadership, Mongol armies began advancing westward. This advance was not an ordinary campaign of conquest. This advance was the beginning of a wave that would change Europe forever. And the first target was the Rus principalities. Soon, Mongol armies reached Kiev. The city was placed under siege. And Kiev fell to the Mongol armies. The balance of power in Eastern Europe had now changed forever. Mongol armies continued advancing westward. Poland and Hungary had become the next targets. European armies suffered defeat after defeat. A great fear spread across Europe. Mongol armies were preparing to advance deeper into Europe. But unexpected news arrived. The great Khan, Gidai, had died. And Batu Khan was forced to withdraw his armies. Batu Khan established a new center along the Volga River. This center was the city of Sarai. Sarai soon became the capital of the Golden Horde. And Sarai quickly became a major center of trade. The Golden Horde established dominance over the Rus principalities. But this dominance was not direct occupation. The Rus principalities began paying tribute. Through this system, the Golden Horde controlled vast territories efficiently. The northern branch of the Silk Road passed through Golden Horde territory. These routes connected the east and the west. The city of Sarai became an international trade center. Different cultures met within Golden Horde lands. Over time, the structure of the Golden Horde began to change. Turkic steppe communities became increasingly influential within the state. This transformation also affected the structure of governance. The Golden Horde became a Turkic-Mongol steppe empire. The most important turning point came during the reign of Berk Khan. Berk Khan encountered Islam, and Berk Khan accepted Islam. The Golden Horde had become part of the Islamic world. The destruction of Baghdad caused great anger within the Golden Horde. Berk Khan moved against Hulagu Khan. For the first time, Mongol armies fought against each other. This war created a major fracture within the Mongol world. The Golden Horde became a powerful center north of the Black Sea. Crimean ports became major centers of international trade. Genoese merchants established colonies in the region. These colonies strengthened trade between the Golden Horde and Europe. During this period, the Grand Duchy of Moscow began to rise. At first, Moscow was a principality under Golden Horde authority. But over time, Moscow grew stronger. And this rise laid the foundation for the future Russian state. The Golden Horde reached one of its most powerful eras. Especially under Uzbek Khan, the state reached its peak. During this time, Islam became the official state religion. The Golden Horde had become a great empire. Over time, the Golden Horde began to weaken due to internal conflicts. Struggles for the throne shook the central authority. This situation allowed the principalities to grow stronger. The power of the Golden Horde began to fragment. By the 15th century, the Golden Horde began to fragment. The Kazan Khanate became one of the successor states. The Crimean Khanate rose to power north of the Black Sea. The Astrakhan Khanate also inherited the Golden Horde's legacy. During this period, Moscow gradually became independent. The Golden Horde lost its former strength. The political balance of Eastern Europe was changing once again. Yet the legacy of the Golden Horde continued for centuries. Toktamish Khan faced the army of Timur. This battle became a disaster for the Golden Horde. The Golden Horde suffered a devastating blow. And Timur advanced into Golden Horde territory. The legacy of the Golden Horde continued across the steppe, but in the east, a new power was rising, to be continued. By the mid-13th century, the Mongol armies were advancing toward the west. This advance was more than a conquest. It was the beginning of a new empire. In 1256, Hulagu Khan launched a massive campaign toward the west. His goal was to bring Persia and the Middle East under Mongol rule. One of the first major targets was the fortress of Alamet. The Mongols laid siege to the fortress high in the mountains. The fortress of Alamet could not hold for long. The Mongol army captured the fortress in a short time. The fortress, once thought unreachable, had fallen. Now the gates of Mesopotamia were open to the Mongols. The Mongol army was now advancing toward Baghdad. For centuries, Baghdad had been the heart of the Islamic world. But now, the city faced an approaching and unprecedented danger. The Mongol armies arrived before the walls of Baghdad. In 1258, the Mongols placed Baghdad under siege. The siege quickly began to overwhelm the city's defenses. The Abbasid defenders resisted from the walls with determination. But the city would not be able to hold much longer. In 1258, the walls of Baghdad were finally breached. The Mongol army entered the city. The Abbasid rule was now on the verge of collapse. With the fall of Baghdad, the Abbasid Caliphate came to an end. After the fall of Baghdad, Hulagu Khan established a new state. This state would become known as the Ilkhanate stretched from Persia to Anatolia. The new state controlled the trade routes between East and West. After the fall of Baghdad, the Ilkhanate army continued, advancing westward. One by one, the cities of Syria began to fall under Ilkhanate control. But the next target of their advance was Egypt. Now they faced a powerful opponent, the In 1260, two great armies met at Ain Jalut. The Mamluk cavalry launched their attack against the Mongol army. The battle quickly turned into a fierce confrontation. This battle stopped the Mongol advance in the Middle East. After Ain Jalut, the Ilkhanate began adapting to the lands they ruled. Persian administrators began to play an important role in government. Islamic scholars became increasingly influential around the court. The Mongols were no longer only conquerors, they had become rulers of an empire. In 1295, Ghazan Khan made a decisive choice. By accepting Islam, he changed the direction of the state. This decision transformed the identity of the Ilkhanate. The Ilkhanate had now become a powerful Islamic state. During the Ilkhanate period, the Silk Road began to revive once again. Trade between East and West became secure once again. The Ilkhanate administration secured control over the trade routes. These routes made the Ilkhanate one of the most important powers in the region. In 1335, after the death of Abu Said Bahadur Khan, the balance began to change. Struggles for the throne began among members of the dynasty. Regional commanders began acting independently. The Ilkhanate was losing its former strength. The Ilkhanate administration gradually began adopting Persian state traditions. The Karakoyunlu Turkmen began rising across Persia and eastern Anatolia. The Aq Koyunlu soon became one of the major powers of the region. The Aq Koyunlu soon became one of the major powers of the region. Although the Ilkhanate had fallen, its legacy continued to live on. Cities, trade routes, and centers of learning continued to survive. Movement along the Silk Road continued. But a new balance of power was emerging across the region. After the Ilkhanate, new movements began to rise in the east. In Central Asia, new leaders began gathering strength. Across the steppes, preparations for new campaigns were underway. Soon, one name would stand at the center of this movement. After the Ilkhanate, a new power was rising in Central Asia. The leader of this rising power would be Timur. Soon, his campaigns would reshape the fate of the entire region. A new imperial age was about to begin. By the late 13th century, the world had become a stage of powerful empires. In the West, the Byzantine Empire still survived around Constantinople. Across Anatolia, the Anatolian Seljuk state was weakening under Mongol pressure. To the south, the Mamluk Sultanate stood as the only force able to stop the Mongol advance. In the north, the Golden Horde ruled the vast steppe lands beyond the Black Sea. Further east, the Chagatai Khanate controlled Central Asia, and in the Far East, the Yuan Empire dominated China. At the center of this world stood the Ilkhanate, but its power would not last forever. Soon, a new conqueror would rise from Central Asia. His name was Timur. In the 13th century, the Islamic world was facing a major crisis. From the east, the Mongols were advancing. In the west, Crusader states still controlled the coastline. Meanwhile, the Abbasid Caliphate was losing its power. The Mamluk system was one of the most unique military structures of the medieval world. Mamluks were recruited at a young age and trained in specialized military academies in Cairo. They mastered horseback riding and archery, transforming into elite cavalry warriors. Their loyalty was not to families, but directly to their commanders. At first, the Mamluks were not independent. They served within the Ayyubid state, founded by Saladin. They were first used as palace guards and elite cavalry units. Over time, they became the most powerful military force within the state. By the year 1250, the Mamluks were no longer just a military class. They had gained enough power to influence the leadership of the state. In 1250, they seized control and established their own state. Thus, The era of the Bahri Mamluks had begun. In 1258, Mongol armies reached Baghdad, the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate. Soon, the city was placed under siege. The fall of Baghdad created a massive shock across the Islamic world. The Mongol armies continued advancing, and Syria became their next target. Mongol armies rapidly advanced into the lands of Syria. Damascus and the surrounding cities fell under serious threat. The Mamluks began preparing to stop the approaching threat. The Mamluk army marched north, preparing to confront the Mongols. In 1260, the Mamluk army prepared to confront the Mongols in the Valley of Angel. The Mamluk army was commanded by Sultan Kut. One of his leading commanders was The two armies faced each other at Angel. As the battle began, the Mamluks executed a planned tactical retreat. Mongol forces began pursuing the retreating Mamluk troops. But this retreat was a trap. The Mamluk forces launched a sudden counterattack, surrounding the Mongol army. At Angjalut, the Mamluk army successfully stopped the Mongol advance. The Mongol army was forced to retreat. This victory was more than just the outcome of a battle. It became a turning point that changed the course of history. With the victory at Ain Jalut, the Mongol advance into the Middle East was halted. The Mamluks secured control over Syria and Palestine. Mamluk commanders began shaping the new balance of power in the region. The Mamluks had now become the dominant military power of the region. After the victory at Ain Jalut, one of the most important leaders of the Mamluk army emerged. That leader was Sultan Baybars soon took control of the Mamluk Sultanate. Under his leadership, the Mamluk Sultanate entered a new era of strength. Sultan Baybars first secured the frontier against the Mongol threat. Defensive positions along the Syrian frontier were strengthened. Mamluk commanders reorganized the defense of the region. This prevented the Mongols from advancing once again. Sultan Baybars did not fight only against the Mongols. Crusader fortresses along the Levant coast still posed a serious threat. Baybars launched a series of campaigns against these fortresses. As a result of these campaigns, many Crusader fortresses fell under Mamluk control. Mamluk campaigns changed the balance of power along the eastern Mediterranean coast. Crusader fortresses gradually became isolated. The Mamluk army turned toward the last major Crusader strongholds in the region. Thus, Mamluk dominance along the eastern Mediterranean coast began to take shape. In 1291, the Mamluk army laid siege to the city of Acre. The city was the last major Crusader stronghold in the eastern Mediterranean. After intense fighting, the Mamluk forces managed to breach the city. With the fall of Acre, Crusader presence in the region came to an end. During the Mamluk period, Cairo became one of the most important cities in the world. The city became a major center of international trade. Madrasas were established, and intellectual life flourished. Cairo became the political and cultural center of the Islamic world. The Mamluk army was one of the most disciplined military forces of its time. Each Mamluk soldier was a skilled horseman and expert archer. These cavalry units provided exceptional mobility on the battlefield. Thanks to this military structure, the Mamluks remained one of the most powerful armies in the region for a long time. Over time, a new era began within the Mamluk Sultanate. During this period, the ruling class was largely of Circassian origin. Although the political structure changed, the military strength remained. The Mamluks continued to be one of the most powerful states in the region. By the late 15th century, the Ottoman Empire began to rise rapidly in power. The Ottomans were expanding from Anatolia toward the Middle East. This expansion made a direct confrontation with the Mamluks inevitable. Thus, a new era of conflict began between the two great powers. In 1516, the Mamluks and the Ottomans faced each other at the Battle of Marj-Deby. The Ottoman army gained a significant advantage with its advanced weaponry. The Mamluk army suffered a heavy defeat in this battle. This defeat marked the beginning of the end for the Mamluk Sultanate. After the victory at Marj-Deby, the Ottoman army advanced toward Cairo. Cairo was the final major center of the Mamluk Sultanate. In 1517, the Ottoman army captured the city. Thus, the Mamluk Sultanate came to an end politically. In the 14th century, across the harsh and unforgiving steppes of Central Asia, a child was born who would change the fate of the world. No one knew this child would one day shake empires. His name would be Timur. For a child growing up on the steppe, survival was not a choice, but a necessity. War was a natural part of the world he was born into. But Timur was learning more than just how to fight. And within him was the desire to become more than a simple warrior. Over time, Timur was becoming more than just a warrior. Alliances were formed, and just as quickly, they were broken. Power was no longer won by courage alone, but by strategy. And Timur had learned the rules of this game. Semir was becoming the center of Timur's power. One by one, the tribes began to gather around him. And in time, Timur declared his own destiny. He was no longer just a leader, but the ruler of a rising empire. The goal was no longer survival, but conquest. Cities were besieged, and those who resisted paid a heavy price. Where Timur's army passed, it left behind not only victory, but destruction. And Timur knew that fear was the most powerful weapon of all. Two powers once allied were now standing against each other. The steppes became the stage for one of history's greatest clashes. Defeat was not just the end of a battle, but the fall of a power. And Timur was no longer just a conqueror, but a force-shaking countenance. Timur's army was now advancing into the heart of India. Before him stood a force unlike anything he had faced. But the outcome did not change. The city fell. And what remained was one of the darkest marks in history. Two great powers finally stood face to face. The plains of Ankara became the stage for one of history's most critical battles. And in the end, the Ottoman Sultan was captured. Samarkand was now one of the most magnificent cities in the world. Timur had become not only a destroyer, but a builder. Minds gathered from conquered lands turned this city into a center of knowledge. And the empire was larger than ever before. Timur's empire was growing larger with every passing year. Conquered lands were merging into a vast and unstoppable power. The roads were now under his control. Trade, power, and wealth flowed within his borders. Different cultures, different cities, all united under a single authority. And Timur had no intention of stopping. For him, a border was simply the next target. Timur's victories were not won only on the battlefield. He was conquering the minds of his enemies. His name was enough to spread fear before he even arrived. Many cities chose to surrender without a fight. Because everyone knew the cost of resistance would be far greater. Timur's armies were now turning toward the greatest cities of the world. The target was Damascus. Strong walls were not enough to stop his advance. Cities fell, and wonders were left in silence. And Timur was no longer just a conqueror, but a force that reshaped history. For Timur, there was still a world left unconquered, and he turned his gaze to the east. Hedef Dunyanin and Büyük Medinalarından Biridi, kin. But this time, nature itself was as ruthless as the enemy. And Timur was marching toward the greatest campaign of his life. As the journey dragged on, the army began to weaken. The cold was taking its toll on everyone. And Timur was facing the limits of his power for the first time. Whispers spread through the camp. The generals were uneasy. Something was changing. And in the end, even the greatest conqueror could not defy time. In 1405, the steppe fell into silence. Timur's campaign ended here. He was gone, but the power he built still remained. The empire was vast, but the one who held it together was gone. And Timur was etched into history as a name remembered with both fear and awe. His story was not written only in war. Historians recorded his name across countless pages. After destruction, a legacy emerged. Cities were reshaped. Timur's legacy was remembered through both destruction and creation. And today, his name still echoes as one of history's most powerful legacies. When Timur died, he left behind a shattered world. His empire quickly began to fall apart, and a massive power vacuum emerged. And that vacuum called for new powers. In the 14th century, Eastern Anatolia was a land where power struggles began. Two great powers were rising on these lands: the Karakohunlu and the Akkohunlu. After Timur's death, Kara Yusuf returned. He regrouped his scattered power. And he captured Tabriz. Anatolia, Iran, and Mesopotamia. Their destinies were intertwined. The Karakohunlu state was reborn. After Kara Yusuf, Sian Shah ascended the throne. Under his rule, the Karakohunlu state expanded rapidly. Many key cities, including Baghdad, were captured. During his reign, the Karakohunlu experienced their golden age. Sihan Shah was more than just a ruler. He was also a poet. He wrote under the name Hakiki. In his world, sword and pen existed together. In the east, a new power was rising. The Akkohunlu were emerging. Their foundations were laid by Kara Uluk Osman, but their true power had yet to come. A new leader entered the stage. That leader was Uzenhazen. He watched his rival patiently, and he waited for the right moment. In 1467, two great powers faced each other. The battle was fierce and brutal. Sian Shah was defeated in battle, and the Karakohunlu state collapsed. After the victory, the Akkohunlu gained power. Uzenhazen established a vast empire. Tabriz became the capital of the Akkohunlu state. The state reached its peak during his reign. But in the west, a new power was rising. This power was the Ottoman Empire. Uzenhazen closely watched this rise. Tension between the two great powers was rising. The Ottoman army was disciplined and powerful. The Akkohunlu army was preparing for battle. The two armies faced each other. Before the battle, there was a heavy silence. The battle began suddenly. The clash quickly turned into chaos. The Ottoman army used its firepower. The AQ Koyunlu army was pushed under pressure. The balance of the battle had shifted. The AQ Koyunlu forces began to retreat. The battlefield turned into a scene of devastation, with hundreds fallen and order completely shattered. This defeat permanently ended the military dominance of the AQ Koyunlu state. After the defeat at Otlukbeli, succession struggles began within the AQ Koyunlu court. Power struggles among members of the dynasty intensified. This situation further weakened central authority. The state was now shaken more by internal conflict than by external enemies. As the AQ Koyunlu weakened, a new power was emerging in the east. The leader of this movement was a remarkable figure, despite his young age. He quickly gathered a large following. This rise marked the beginning of a shift in the regional balance of power. The leader of this movement was Shah Ismail. He quickly formed a disciplined force. The force around him grew rapidly. This force moved directly against AQ Koyunlu dominance. By 1501, Shah Ismail was advancing toward the heart of AQ Koyunlu territory. Tabriz was aware of the approaching threat. Shah Ismail entered the city with little resistance. With the capture of Tabriz, AQ Koyunlu rule came to an end. After the capture of Tabriz, a new political order began to take shape. Shah Ismail quickly established central authority. The state was built upon a strong administrative system. Thus, the Safavid state officially emerged. The end of the AQ Koyunlu and Kara Koyunlu era led to a new balance of power in the region. These two nomadic origin structures gave way to a more centralized and lasting state. The Safavid state quickly became one of the dominant political forces in the region. This transformation opened the door to a new era, Ottoman-Safavid rivalry. At the end of the 13th century, Anatolia stood in the middle of a collapsing world. The Seljuk state had fragmented. Mongol shadows covered the horizon. But no one knew. An empire was about to rise from this chaos. Anatolia had lost its old order. A new age was beginning. Principalities were rising. Borders were being redrawn. And history was quietly changing direction. On the western frontier of Anatolia, there was a small border settlement. But this place was no ordinary land. Here, a new power was rising. And this power would soon change the fate of the world. The people who lived here were the people of the frontier. They were not just nomads. Here, a power was being forged. And the name of this power was the Kai tribe. At the head of these people stood an instant leader. His duty was to guard the frontier. Because beyond this frontier stood Byzantium. And this frontier would soon change the course of history. On this frontier, a new leader was rising. No one knew it yet. But his destiny was not to remain just a warrior. It would found a state. One night, Osman Bey arrived at a different door. This door belonged to Sheikh Edabalis Lodge. And this meeting was not just a visit. That night would change the course of history. That night, Osman Bey had a dream. From Sheikh Edabalis' chest, a moon began to rise. And that moon entered Osman Bey's heart. From his chest rose a great tree. Its shadow covered the world. When morning came, Osman Bey told his dream. Sheikh Edebali knew the meaning of this dream. This dream foretold the birth of a great state, and the founder of that state would be Osman Bey. Now the target was clear. Osman Bey's first target was the fortress of Karakohize, and Osman Bey took his first great step. This step would mark the beginning of a state. Karakohize was under siege, and the battle began. Soon after, Karakohize was conquered, and Osman Bey had taken his first city. Karakohize was now under Osman Bey's control, and the Ottoman banner rose over a fortress for the first time. In this fortress, the khutbah was proclaimed in Osman Bey's name. This moment was the declaration of a state's birth. By this time, Seljuk authority in Anatolia was fading. and the frontier lords began making their own decisions. Osman Bey, too, was now acting in his own name. These steps marked the true beginning of the Ottoman state. Across western Anatolia, Byzantine frontier lines stretched ahead. Osman Bey's next targets were Bilcek and Yarhisar. And Osman Bey began making strategic moves. The Ottomans were now beginning to expand. Osman Bey had formed a strong bond with Sheikh Itabali. This bond grew even stronger through marriage. And Osman Bey began preparing for This move would accelerate the rise of the Ottomans. Yarhisar was one of the Ottomans' next targets. And soon, the siege began. The Ottomans were now the rising power of the region. But ahead of the Ottomans stood a greater target. That target was and Bursa would become the first great capital of the Ottomans. But the conquest of Bursa had not yet begun. Across western Anatolia, Byzantine defenses were weakening. Ottoman pressure was steadily increasing. New warriors were gathering around Osman Bey. The Ottomans were now one of the strongest frontier principalities. The Byzantine Empire sought to stop the Ottoman advance. And the two armies met at Koyunhisar. The outcome of this battle would change the balance in Anatolia. And the Ottomans won their first major pitched battle. After Koyunhisar, the balance in Anatolia had changed. Byzantine defenses began to withdraw. And before the Ottomans, a great objective was rising. That objective was Bursa. The rise of the Ottomans was only just beginning. The next destination was Bursa. And the Ottoman army continued its march westward. To be continued. The year is 1204. The Fourth Crusade was no longer heading to the Holy Land, but toward one of the richest cities in the world. The target was no longer Jerusalem, but Constantinople. The Christian world was turning against itself. This attack was not driven by faith alone. It was a calculated move for trade, power, and control of sea routes. And at the center of this plan stood a rising maritime power, Venice. When the sack of 1204 began, Constantinople faced a catastrophe unlike anything it had seen in centuries. Churches were looted, sacred relics were stolen, and the wealth of Byzantium was loaded onto ships. One of the greatest beneficiaries of this destruction was Venice. Constantinople had fallen, Byzantium was shattered, and the Latin Empire had been established within the city. But Venice was not the only rising power in the Mediterranean. Another maritime republic was growing in the west, Genoa. Through trade networks and powerful banking families, the Genoese accumulated enormous wealth. Their main ambition was to dominate the trade routes leading into the Black Sea. And soon, a rivalry that would last for centuries began between Venice and Genoa. By the 13th century, Mediterranean trade had become one of Europe's greatest sources of wealth. Spices, silk, grain, and precious goods. Every product arriving from the east generated immense profit. The states controlling the ports were also controlling the economic state of the Mediterranean. That is why the rivalry between Venice and Genoa became far more than a simple struggle for trade. In 1261, Byzantium made a crucial agreement with Genoa to end Latin domination over Constantinople. Emperor Michael VIII, Palaiologos, agreed to grant the Genoese major trading privileges. That same year, Constantinople was recaptured and the Byzantine Empire was restored. But even after its return, Byzantium was no longer as powerful as before. The city's economy was increasingly falling under foreign influence. One of the greatest privileges granted to the Genoese by Byzantium was the district of Galata. Rising across the Golden Horn, Galata quickly became one of Genoa's most important